The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador L walked to the center podium, her footsteps echoing against the crystalline floors. Around her, representatives from 47 species watched with varying degrees of curiosity and contempt. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic stage, barely a century into their membership. Honorable delegates, Elle began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she carried. I come before you not as a diplomat, but as a witness to genocide. The Vacrine representative, a towering insectoid creature, clicked its mandibles in what might have been laughter. More human dramatics. Your species has a flair for exaggeration. Elle's jaw tightened. She pressed a control on her wrist device, and holographic images materialized above the assembly. The delegates gasped collectively. The images showed the colony of New Perth, or what remained of it. Scorched earth, collapsed biodomes, and worst of all, the small bodies laid out in rows. 73 children, Elle said, her voice cracking slightly. The youngest was 4 months old. The Krell Dominion targeted our colony's educational center and nursery facilities specifically. The Krell ambassador, a reptilian being with silver scales, rose from his seat. We conducted a military operation against a human outpost that was encroaching on our territorial claims. Collateral damage is unfortunate, but inevitable in war. You targeted children. Elle's composure shattered for a moment before she regained control. There were no military installations on New Perth. It was a farming colony. Those children were in schools and daycare centers that you deliberately— Enough. The council arbiter interrupted. Ambassador L, while tragic, conflicts between species often result in civilian casualties. The Krell have paid the standard reparations as outlined in Article 7 of the Galactic Treaty. This matter is closed. Elle stood frozen, disbelief washing over her. Around the chamber, delegates were already returning to their seats, some engaging in casual conversation. To them, this was just another line item, just another statistic. This isn't over, Elle whispered, but no one was listening anymore. 3 months later, Oscar sat in the command center of the UHSF Retribution, studying the holographic display of the Krell home system. As Admiral of the United Human Space Fleet, he had known this day would come. Humanity had a long history of patience, but an even longer one of retribution when their children were harmed. All ships reporting ready, Admiral, Captain Morrison announced. Oscar nodded slowly. The fleet assembled around him represented humanity's entire military might, every carrier, every destroyer, every weapon they had spent the last century developing while the galaxy dismissed them as primitive newcomers. Open a channel to the Krell homeworld, Oscar commanded. The main screen flickered to life, showing the Krell High Chancellor in his ornate chamber. The reptilian leader's eyes widened at the sight of the human fleet surrounding his planet. What is the meaning of this act of aggression? The Chancellor demanded. 3 months ago, Oscar began, his voice cold and measured. Your forces murdered 73 human children. Your government called it collateral damage. The Galactic Council called it acceptable losses. We call it a line you should never have crossed. The Council has already ruled. We don't care what the Council ruled, Oscar interrupted. We tried your way. We followed your laws, your procedures, your precious articles and treaties, and we watched as the lives of our children were reduced to a reparations payment. No more. The Chancellor's scales rippled with what might have been fear. You cannot declare war on an entire species over a single incident. The Council will do nothing, Oscar said. They've made that abundantly clear. You want to know what makes humans different from the rest of you. You've all forgotten what it means to truly fight. You've grown soft behind your treaties and arbitrations. But we remember. He leaned forward, his eyes boring into the screen. Every human knows Earth's history. We know what total war looks like. We've committed genocide against ourselves over resources, ideology, and territory. We've built weapons that could crack our own planet. And then we looked at what we'd become and said never again. We joined your council thinking we'd evolved beyond that. Oscar's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. But you harmed our children. You forced us to remember what we're capable of. You're bluffing, the Chancellor said. But his voice wavered. No civilized species would— Civilized? Oscar laughed bitterly. We tried civilized. Civilized got our children murdered and our grief dismissed. Now you get the species that conquered a death world, that survived ice ages and supervolcanoes, that turned nuclear weapons on itself and somehow lived to tell the tale. He entered a command on his console. You have 6 hours to evacuate every Krell from your home world and your 3 colony planets. After that, they become monuments warnings to any species that thinks harming human children is acceptable. You can't, the Council will never. The Council had their chance, Oscar said. Tell them to look up the word Carthage in our history databases. Tell them humans don't forget, and we don't forgive. Not when it comes to our young. The transmission ended. Oscar turned to his bridge crew, seeing the mix of determination and sorrow on their faces. None of them wanted this, but every single one of them had seen the images from New Perth. Begin the countdown. Oscar ordered quietly. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session as the news spread. Ambassador L stood before them once more, her expression unreadable. Stop this madness immediately, the Arbiter demanded. Your fleet is in violation of every treaty we hold sacred. L met his gaze calmly. We withdrew from all treaties 3 hours ago. As of now, humanity operates under one law: harm our children, and your species ends. Not your government, not your military, your entire species. This is barbarism. The Vacrine representative shouted. No, L corrected softly. This is protection. You taught us that in your civilized galaxy. Our children's lives are worthless. So we'll teach you that in our uncivilized response. Your entire species is worth less than a single human child. The chamber erupted in chaos, but Elle simply turned and walked away. Behind her, through the massive viewport, the delegates could see the distant flare of dying suns as humanity made good on its promise. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again.